Welcome back. We're going to work on the Fox tutorial. This one's a little bit tricky because they don't give you as many instructions as you would usually have in a tutorial. For one thing, they don't tell you what size artboard to use, so we're just going to pick one for ourselves. They also don't tell you the sizes of things that they want, like this triangle. And so it's all going to be kind of subjective, but we're going to be looking at pictures to kind of decide how big or how small we're going to make something. So let's start by opening a new file. Again, I'm just going to choose any artboard. I'll go with the letter artboard. It doesn't matter orientation or size exactly. I'm going to go with RGB color because it looks best online. So there's my artboard. Let's save as. And in our digital illustration class folder, I'm going to make a new folder for the Fox tutorial. And I'm going to call this file Fox. And we're ready to move on. Let me brighten this up for you a little bit. Okay, so we're going to create the head first. Let's take a look at what this first shape's going to look like. It's an upside down triangle. So they're telling us to use the polygon tool so we can make a triangle. So we need to make sure that it has 3 sides. And there it is. Now that you have the 3 corners and you have the triangle, we're going to choose a specific color. So a lot of times when you click on fill, it just kind of opens up to the swatches for you here, but we want to make a specific color. So we're going to go with the color mixer. And here you can see we're in RGB mode. If you come up to this little hamburger here, you have lots of options. You can work in grayscale, you can work in HSB, that's something you're going to find handy later, hue, saturation, and brightness. You can work in print mode or web safe mode. We're going to stick with regular RGB. And here are the numbers that they want us to use for each of the colors. They want red to be 212. Green will be 88. And you can see it's already starting to build the color for us. And blue will be 42. Hit enter. And there you have the orange color. Something that they don't mention is that they're not using a stroke. We can see it right here. So we're going to turn off our stroke. And there we go. Remember, they have it upside down as well. So we're going to turn it. With our selection tool, we're going to hover on the corner and spin, hit the shift key so it's pointing perfectly down, and release it. Let's see what's next. Now we're going to build this arc shape. To do that, we're going to go to Effect, Warp, Arc Upper. Effect, Warp, Arc Upper. Now mine's already set, but you're going to want to look at everything here. Horizontal needs to be activated, 50% on the bend, 0 on horizontal and vertical. If you're doing this and you're not getting a proper preview here, don't worry. Sometimes it needs to just be refreshed, so you can turn it off, turn it back on, and you should see this shape. Click OK. And we've got our first shape. Let's zoom in a little bit so it's easier to work with. And we're ready to move on to step 2. So we're going to copy and paste that triangle. Control C, Control B. So basically Control C, it's going to copy it. Control B, it's going to paste it behind the current triangle. Control C, Control B, so we've made a second copy of it. Here we can see there's 2 of them. If you're having trouble with the keyboard shortcuts, you can just come up here, click copy, go back into edit again, and paste in back. It's the same as the keyboard shortcuts. So right now we've got the back one activated, and that's going to be his outer face right here. So we'll call that outer face, and this is the inner face. Let's lock that one and save. So right now we're going to work on that outer face structure. First we want to change the color to this oatmeal color. If you see these symbols right here, these little eyeballs, they allow you to turn a layer on and off so you can see what you're doing around it. So if I turn both of these off, they go away. If I turn just the back one on, I can work on this one now, and the front one is not going to interrupt my view of it. So let's go to the properties, and here's our colors. Make sure your layer is selected, go in, and we're going to change these again. 233 for red, 218 for green, and 194 for blue. Hit enter or return, and there's that oatmeal color. So with the triangle still selected, go to Window, Appearance. That's going to open your Appearance panel. I actually keep the Appearance panel always handy right here. What this allows me to do is it allows me to change anything on any particular layer at any time. Since this layer is selected, these are all the attributes of that layer. It's got no stroke. Here's the fill color. Here's the warp. This warp is from earlier when we were doing it with the orange. Remember, we copied and pasted that shape? So it brought all of that over here, including that warp. But I want to change the warp now. If you don't have the Appearance panel, you go up to Window, click Appearance, and it'll give you the Appearance panel right here in your window somewhere. If you want to keep it handy, you can drag it and drop it kind of like a magnet. It'll clip it right here, and it'll always be there if you need it, like your layers and your properties. So for this, I need to turn off the current warp. So I'm going to put this to 0, and you can see we've got a basic triangle. Now we need to change it to a different kind of warp. So let's click on that warp. Instead of an arc upper, we want a bulge. We want it to be vertical, 70%. Keeping the zeros on the bottom. Here's the preview that we want to see. It's not showing us what we want to see, so we're going to refresh it. And there it is. Hit OK. Now you've got two shapes for the head. And it will look like this. So let's go into the layers. Let's turn that eyeball back on. So now we can see both layers. And we've got our shape. Let's lock this and save. And we're ready to move on. So we're going to keep the same color fill, that oatmeal color, and we're going to use the ellipse tool to make an oval. Again, they're not telling us any sizes. So we're going to go here and we're going to kind of look at this guy. You can see the shape of the oval here. We can see it's pretty kind of fat, goes just a little bit past the edge of the face here on each side. We can see how close it is to the point here, and we're going to try to make an oval that's about that size. We can adjust it later if we need to. So let's go over, select our ellipse tool. We've already got our fill color set, so we're just going to make our oval. When I'm looking at it, let's see, maybe a little bit fatter. Let's move it up, see how it's looking. I'm going to go on to the next step before I decide exactly the size, because what the next step is going to do is it's going to take, remember that anchor point tool here that you find right underneath your pen tool. If you remember from the last tutorial or last week, we click here, click here. Remember, it was giving us an eyeball shape for the key. Now it's given us the cheeks for the fox. So we can come down here now, kind of see the size. Looks pretty good. Let's see what's next. So we're going to go on with the warp tool again. In the warp options, we're going to choose Effect, Warp, Arc. Not at all the shape that we want. We need to change everything about it. So we're going with horizontal, 25%, and zeros. If it's not giving us the preview we're expecting to see, we're going to refresh it. And there it is. Let's check our fox again. Might be a little bit wide. The best way to figure that out is to drag it behind where it belongs. So let's select it here, highlight it, drag it down, and drop it. So it's not exactly where we want it to be. We can move it. Take the select tool, make sure that our layers above it are locked, and now only this layer will move. Looks like it's a little too wide. Maybe a little bit more. Again, we aren't given specific sizes, so we're going to need to play with this one until we get it the way we like it. Now we want to make sure that it's aligned with everything else here. So I'm going to unlock the top layer here. I've got my cheek layer here selected. I'm going to shift select the top of the face here. I want to align this layer with the top of the face. I don't want the top of the face to move. So while I've got both of these selected, I'm going to click this layer again, and you can see it's highlighting it. Now I can come here and I can align it. It's going to align the secondary layer to the dominant layer. So I'm going to use my horizontal here, click it, and it'll move it right in. I'm going to make this a little more off center so you can see how that works. So I've got this layer selected. I'm going to shift select the orange layer, then I'm going to let go of the shift key and click the orange layer again and hit align. And it's aligning that cheek perfectly with the orange layer. I can come up here now, relock that layer. The cheeks look pretty good. I've got a fluffy cheeked fox coming here, and we're ready to move on. Now we're going to create the eyes and nose. Let's take a look. They're pretty simple. 3 small ellipses. We're going to lock this layer. We're going to come up and grab our ellipse tool. We see the color that we want, no specific size, so I'm just going to draw an ellipse, hit your shift key to make sure that it's perfectly round. It can be any size right now. Let go of your mouse, let go of the keyboard key, go into the properties, and we're going to make it the proper color. Looks good. Now I'm going to zoom in here. Oh, my zoom doesn't want to work. So I'm going to zoom in here. Select it, bring it over. So we can see it's definitely too large. We're going to use our shift key and downsize it. Might still be too large. Let's try again. So there's one eye. If you remember, when we're in the selection tool, if we hit Option and drag, we're going to get a perfect match. But I don't want him to be cockeyed. How do I make sure that the two eyes are going to be right on the same plane? With my Option key still held down, I'm going to use another finger to push Shift. So right now I'm on Shift Option, and it's going to make them perfectly aligned. So I can move it in and out now. Let go of the mouse, and then the two keys. And we need one more to go right on the tip. Hit the Option key and drag. That pink line right here is letting us know that we're perfectly aligned with the center. So his nose isn't going to be off to the side here. He's perfectly aligned. So you take a look at it if you feel like, you know what, these are still too big. Select, hit Shift, select, select, and you can resize all of these together by keeping the Shift key down and pulling. And they're all getting resized. And once we feel like, okay, it's the size that we want, then we can take these two, select, Shift, select, draw them up to the center where we want them to be, draw them out, keep that pink line in the center so we know that they're perfectly centered. This one's coming off, so I'm going to hit the Shift key and it puts it right back. Looking pretty good. Let's save. Again, there's a lot of trial and error with this tutorial, so if you need to, every once in a while, hit pause, back it up, replay it, and you'll get it all. So we've got our eyes, we've got our nose, and we're ready to move on. Now we're going to do the ears. Again, we're going to use the polygon tool. We're going to create a triangle, and we're going to colorize it. So let's go up, grab our polygon, click, it's got 3 sides. There we go. And we're going to colorize it and warp it. So let's go for the color. 212, 88, and 42. So if we look at it, this is the exact same color. We wouldn't necessarily have to go in and type all of those colors in. I'm going to back out of that. If this is selected, I can come over here and get my eyedrop tool and click on anything on my artboard to match the color. So since I know this is going to be the same color, I can just click that and it immediately gives me the proper numbers. So now we're going to take our ear here and we're going to warp it with Effect, Warp, Bulge. Okay, we're going to need different measurements than what we had before. We need it to be vertical, 30%, -50, -30. Refresh our preview, and it looks right. And let's see what's next. We're going to create a copy of the triangle with the same warp options, and this will be the inner part of the ear. So you can see if we take a look at our fox guy, he's got an inner part of his ear here. It's shaped exactly the same, but it's a different color and a different size. Here you can see it's going to be darker. So I'm going to go up here to Edit, Copy, edit, and I'm going to choose paste in place. That's going to put it exactly on top of the current shape. So although we can't see it when we come over here, we can see both shapes. Let's hit save and make sure to start labeling more of these layers. We can use the eye tool here to turn things on and off to find out what they are. This is the left eye. The right eye. And that means that this one is the nose. For the ears, right now the selected one is going to be the top one. That's the one that we're going to shrink. So that's going to be the inner ear. And the outer ear. We're going to lock that one so it doesn't move while we're working on the inner ear. So you remember how to resize something without losing the shape. You're going to hit your shift key and drag down. Now we can't tell what the color is going to be really, or what the shape is going to be until we colorize it. So let's find out the color for the inner ear. There we go. $178, $66, and $31. So since I dragged it down in size from the top, it left the bottom exactly where it is. So it's lined up well. I've got the inner ear selected. I'm going to unlock the outer ear selected as well. Now I can move them together. And I can resize them together. So I'm going to hit my shift key and drag it down. Getting about to the right size. So now we're ready to create the opposite ear. I'm going to select my big outer ear part here. I'm going to edit copy, edit paste. So there it is, but I need to warp it in the opposite direction. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to zero all of this out. So now when I refresh, I should just have a triangle. For the opposite side, I'm going to stick with bulge and vertical, but I'm going to make this 30, 50, and negative 30. Check my preview, and it's good. I'm going to do the same for the inner ear. So I'm going to grab this inner ear, edit copy, edit paste, and I'm going to change the appearance of this bulge. I'm going to zero it out to start it over. And we're going to go with 30. So this is going to be the exact same shape as the one above it. It's just smaller and it's going to have the different color. Negative 30 here. And there's our shapes. So I can pull this one over here now. Looks pretty good. I can select them both. Shift click. So now I can start to decide where I want to place them. We know that we want them behind the head. So we're going to select all of these layers. Click, shift click, and shift click. And it's going to go back behind the head here. I'm going to unlock this, highlight, shift highlight, and again, and drag them all behind. I'm going to relock the head, So now I'm going to look at the ears. I can see that one is higher than the other one. So I'm going to select the two ears. I'm not going to make either of them dominant. I'm just going to say that I want them vertically aligned. So now you can see they're perfectly aligned. I'm going to do the same with the inner ears. For this one, I really like where this one is placed. So I'm going to shift click to get them both, then I'm going to let go of the shift key and just click this one again to make it dominant and say I want them both aligned to that space. So you can see it moved the right inner ear up to match the left. And now they're perfectly aligned. Let's save. And we're going to go here. We've got inner ears and outer ears, but which is which? This would be the right. So I'm just going to put it as an R. We can also kind of see by the way that it's angling here that this is also the right. It's important to label these so when you turn them into your professor, they can see all of your work and they can click on any of your layers here and work on it to help you. If we turn in things that just have a bunch of paths, it makes it really difficult for them to work with us and help us out. So let's lock these up and save, and we're ready to move on. So we put it all together, we put them on the head, we're ready to create the body. It gets a little easier from here. Most of our complicated stuff is done here. We'll have a little bit more of new stuff when we get to the legs and the tail, but the body's pretty simple. So let's just enjoy doing it. So once again, we're gonna make another triangle. We're going to invert it, put it upside down, and these are the colors we're going to use. You're gonna notice here that the body here, the neck, is slightly darker than the face. The reason that you do that is so that you can differentiate between the two without having to draw an outline around it. You don't want a stroke here interrupting your illustration, so you just make one color slightly darker than the other one. It makes sense that the neck would be the darker because the head would cause a bit of a shadow over the neck. So they're going to make the neck a little bit darker than the face. So let's get our triangle. Let's invert it. So we're going to go to select, get our bendy arrow, turn it, hit shift so it's perfectly aligned, let go of the mouse, and then the key. Here's our color palette for the body. So we're going to make these changes. And hit enter. And there it is, the body. You can see it's slightly different. So even though there's no strokes between these, we can see the difference. The body, of course, is going to go behind the head, but let's do the shape first. So we're going to select our triangle here. We're going to go up to Effect, Warp, Bulge. We're going to do vertical, 35%, 0 and 26. Check our preview, and it looks good. So we're going to put the neck behind the head here. Yeah, it could be last. So we'll highlight it and we'll just drag it down and make it last. And there it is. We want to make sure it's aligned, so we're going to move it a little bit, and we can see right here when it's perfectly aligned. Lock those up and save. So that's the neck. Now we're going to make the body. We're starting to get used to the pattern here. We're going to make another polygon, 3 sides for a triangle. This one they're keeping right side up. We've got a different color palette. Let's go for it. There's our body color. Now we're going to do the bulge for the shape. We've still got it selected. We're going to go up to Effect, Warp, and Bulge. And here we go. We're going to be vertical, 75, 0, negative 50. And you can see how that bulge is working. Let's refresh our preview. And there we go. Of course, the body is going to go underneath the neck. We can line it up perfectly here. And we're going to use our picture to kind of decide where we're going to drop it. So we're going to bring it down to the bottom. We can see it's pretty well aligned. He's got a little bit of a skinny waist here. I think we need to pull it up. Judging by the distance here, that looks pretty good. And we see that we're aligned through the center. So those parts were easy and fun. The next part is going to get a little bit complicated again, but we can handle it. We're going to do the legs and the paws. We're going to start by creating his arm. We're going to make an oval. Again, they're not telling us the size, so we're just going to look. We can see it's kind of long and narrow. And then we're going to change the colors. So let's go for our oval with the ellipse tool. Make it kind of long and narrow. We can always resize it later. And we're going to go with our colors here. 212, 88, and 42. From there, we're going to go to the warp options, and we're going to select arc. Effect, warp, arc. And we're going to come down here and see we need it vertical, 40%, 0, and negative 20%. Refresh our preview. It looks good. Okay. We're going to do we've got our colors. We're going to object expand the appearance. So up here we're going to do that right here. And what that's going to do is it's going to change it from a warped oval to a shape that's actually outlined in this shape. And that allows us to do more with it later. From there, don't miss this part. It's pretty small, but it's actually very important. We need to duplicate this arm, and we need to have it land right on top of itself. So we're going to go up here to Edit, Copy, Edit, Paste in Place. So when we come and look, we have 2 copies of it. I'm going to lock this bottom copy because we don't want to lose it or change its shape or move it in any way. Right now we're going to work on the top copy of it. So we're going to move on to the paw that goes on the end of that arm. And again, they're not telling us sizes, but they're showing us that they want another oval that's a little bit on the narrow side. So we've got our ellipse tool. We're going to drag kind of a narrow paw here, and we're going to change its color. $70, 62, and 55. There's our color. We're going to go back to our anchor point tool. You remember where that is up here? It's right behind your pen tool. And you remember what that does to your edges. There we go. 1, 2. This is going to be number 3 right here. We're going to do that by duplicating this layer twice. So remember, you can take your selection tool, hit your option key and drag, release. Keeping your option key down, we're going to click and drag again, and now we've got 3 of them. And they are very specific. They just tell you to go ahead and put it into this sort of shape. So we're going to kind of move them over, get our bendy arrow, rotate them together. That's pretty close. Looks pretty good. So now we're going to go to the Pathfinder tool. I've got it open right here. If you don't have it open, you go up to Window and select Pathfinder. It's going to give you a floaty window here. You put it wherever you want. I like it over here. It's out of the way. So I'm going to select these shapes with my select tool. I'm going to click and drag over them. So all 3 are selected. And then I'm going to come over here to my Pathfinder, and I can see the Unite tool here. And what that's done is it's now united them into one shape. We're going to make a second copy of this one and save it for later. So we're going to hit our option key, click and drag. And we're just going to put that one out of the way for now. Going back to our paw, we're going to place it right over the tip here. It's not going to fit exactly. You just want to make sure that the tip is covering the arm. We don't want the tip too big, so I'm going to drag it in. You can kind of play with it here, get it to the size that you want. If I hover over this, I can see the shape of it down here. And I can see that I need to make that paw a little bit smaller and maybe turn it a little bit. Let's check. A little bit more to this side. Remember, if you zoom in, it'll let you be more precise with where you're landing things. Once you have it to where you think it looks good, that looks pretty good. We're going to move on to the next step, and for this you need to turn on that second layer, because you're going to combine these 2 layers now, and it's going to make this one disappear. So having this layer there is going to keep the arm in sight. If I don't do that, and I just connect 2 of them with the intersect tool, I lose the arm. So I'm going to click out of that, make sure that this one is activated so that it stays in place. I have the paw, shift, click, the top arm. Now I'm going to come back down to the intersect tool, and it's going to create the shape that I need, and I still have the paw there because I had a second copy. So I'm going to select both of these. I want them to stay together, so I'm going to go into the properties, and you can see I have an option here to group. Now both parts of that paw are in one group. I'm going to name that group left arm. Perfect shape. Now I'm going to need one for the other side. We've got the left arm. And you might be thinking that you need this. You're still not going to use it yet. It's for something totally different. We're only going to work with this right now. I'm going to come up here to Object, Transform, And there's a tool here called Reflect, so it's basically a mirror reflection. You can reflect it horizontally, vertically, or you can adjust it to be your own specific adjustment. Once again, we're going to do copy. We're not going to do OK, because if we do OK, we're going to lose our first shape here. We want both, so we're going to hit copy, and now we have both. So we've got two arms for our fox. I'm going to put them together, and we'll be right there. So I've got one arm. I'm going to shift click the second arm, move them down. We want them behind the neck. So let's see here. This is our neck. Let's label our body. Left arm. Let's see which one is the right. That's the left. That's the right. So we're going to rename this group right arm. And now we can tell which is which. Both of these arms need to go on top of the body, but under the neck. So we're going to drag it right in between. Both arms are highlighted. I can click and drag them right in between. So now they're where they need to be in the layer order, but they're too close together. I'm going to shift and drag so that I don't end up with it moving around like this. Shift and drag. We can see that we want it to be a little bit higher here. Right about there. Now I'm going to watch these pink lines, and I can see that the horizontal line going across says that both of these arms are matching in alignment from across. So I can put these where I want them to be, and I can see that they're aligned. So I can drop it and save. He's looking pretty good. Let's see what's next. You can see my guy looks a little bit different. If yours does too, that's fine. They're putting the eyes down here a little bit more. You can do that. It doesn't have to be exact. So now we're going to work on the tail. And again, you can see we're going to start with another oval. You're getting used to these tools now. We're going to make them point, and then we're going to use a warp. So we need to start with that oval. Let's go with our ellipse. Maybe make this one a little bit fatter because it's the tail. Let's take a look. And on the long side, let's look at him. Wow, the tail's really big. It's actually bigger than the rest of him. So we need to make this oval big. Go to the select tool. We'll bring it up here. We'll drag it way down so it's long. We know we want it kind of fluffy, so we're going to drag it out widthwise. And we can still change this again later. This is just an idea. So we need to change our color here. And let's take a look at that. You can see that this color is totally different than the body and the head. Again, we don't want to have outlines around things to be able to tell where they separate. So we're just using a slightly different color so we can see the difference between the tail and the body and the leg and the head. Here's our tail color. $175, $51, starting to look like our tail color, and 18. And there it is. We're going to make our pointy ends. So let's come up here, get our anchor point tool. And then we're going to go to Effect, Distort and Transform, Twist. Effect, Distort and Transform, Twist. Now I've already got it set here from doing this tutorial before. You're going to want to change it to -100 degrees and press OK. Again, you can refresh your preview if you need to, but you can see this shape here is what we're going for. Now we're going to go to Object, Expand Appearance. Again, we want this to be the actual shape of it rather than an oval that's been warped. Before I do that, I'm going to move it over here, see if I like the size. It's looking pretty good. So we're going to go to Object, Expand Appearance, and now that's the actual shape. Hit Save. So you remember that copy of the paw down here? This is where we're going to use it. It's going to be the end of the tail. So we're going to grab it and bring it up. With our selection tool, we're going to turn it. We're going to decide the size and the shape that we want it to be. It's not looking bad. We want the puffy part of that end of the tail to be over the red tail. Again, I can hover over the red part and see where it fits inside the puffy part at the end there. I can come back here and look and see. Maybe I want it a little bit bigger. Kind of spread out those edges on the inside. And once you get it to where you want it to be, remember what we had to do before. We had to make sure that we had a duplicate copy so that when we use that Pathfinder tool, we don't lose it. So we're going to make a copy, highlight, select, hit the Option key, and I'm going to just drag this path down till I see this blue line and drop it. So now I've got my second copy. I can lock that off, and I'm going to work with these two. Select, Shift Select, and intersect. And we still have our shape here because of our second copy. I can unlock that. I've got the tip selected. I can Shift, click, come over to Properties, group those two, and now those two are together as a tail. So let's see where the tail goes. Oh, you know what we didn't do? We didn't change the color of the tip. Let's take care of that. Double click on that tail end right there so that only the tail end is selected. And let's see what the color is going to be. There it is. $224, $204, and $169. There we go. Hit escape, and you're ready to move on. So we want to put the tail behind him here. It should really be the last thing. So it's going to come down here behind the body. Highlight it and drag it and drop it. Now we can select it and move it over. And we're kind of going to look here, how much is over here, how much is here. Looks like it comes over a little more, maybe up a bit. I think my tail's a little bit fluffier than theirs, but that's okay. Looks good. So we're going to double check here. We've got all of our layers named. And you're ready to save it.